we got a crazy story out of Virginia. I know politics can have crazy stories. This is a legitimately crazy story. So let me give you the background of why this is a potentially blockbuster story in the state of Virginia. First of all, we talked, Monday about the right decision that Glenn Youngkin had made to provide a pardon to the father who showed up at the Loudoun County School Board, if I remember correctly, and said his daughter had been sexually assaulted by a boy who was dressed up as a girl and went into the girl's bathroom, and that turned into a huge story. It was a big part of the 2021 election.
They charged him. They charged that dad with assault because he was unruly at the school board meeting, and the prosecutor was really trying to get him.
Yes. So here is a crazy story that's going on. So we had Glenn Youngkin on the program, a couple of months ago? Glenn Youngkin is trying to flip the House of Delegates in Virginia. I believe, somebody can correct me on this, staff, look it up. The Senate, I think, has a small Republican majority, and I think they're trying to flip the House. Either way, I know the House is not, and they have a small Democrat majority. And there's basically 7 seats that are in dispute that are battleground districts. One of the battleground districts is a woman named, and this is everywhere, okay? This is not just me going into the scandal rags. I'm reading
this is
from
New
the
York Times, major story on
Washington Post, it's everywhere. A Democrat candidate for the Virginia General Assembly in a crucial race, according to the New York Times. On Monday, the AP and the Washington Post reported that she and her husband had been live streaming sex acts through a website called Chatterbait, where she was a hot wife experience was her name. And if you paid them, she and her husband, they would engage in sex acts on camera for you. Buck, off air, I was saying, I don't know how anybody found out about this because somebody was watching a lot of different porn and they were like, hey, this looks like the woman who's running for the Virginia General Assembly. I have so many questions about this on so many different levels. One, if you were making sex tapes with your husband on a website called Chatterbait, did you really think that this was not going to go public if you decided to run for office? I mean, there's all these stories about OnlyFans models who are like moms, and then the PTA finds out. I mean, like, if you make porn videos, just an idea for the public, it's going to get out. There aren't very many people who are like, yeah, I used to be in porn. Nobody found out. Now, if you do porn, it's going to get out. But the crazy thing about this, Buck, is she's trying to make herself the victim here. And I just take it outside of, Buck, the fact that she's involved in porn acts with her husband for money, which I would imagine most people don't do. But if that's your thing, whatever. I'm very confident that most people who are in politics don't do this. Buck, they went after Glenn Youngkin for wearing like a sweater vest and being involved with the Carlyle Group. His job is a huge part of why he was attacked. They said, he's a corporate raider. He's totally untrustworthy. And now this woman is saying that she's a victim, and she says the FBI needs to investigate. And the whole thing is very strange.
Here's the claim. A lawyer for Ms. Gibson, this is from the New York Times, said it was unlawful in the state to record someone in a state of undress and distribute it to a third party without that person's consent. But if you record yourself in a state of undress and post that in a public forum, even if you have to pay for that public forum, is then the distribution of that under that statute? You see, you know what I mean? That I don't understand how that holds up.
I don't know what.
I mean, it could be a copyright infringement.
Yeah, I could see that. And again, this is me putting my lawyer hat on here. And let me be clear, I'm not an expert on Chatterbait.com. Maybe some of you are. But I don't know exactly how this website is constructed. The way that they may be making this argument is that this was like like a private sex act that only one person is able to see. I don't know how this thing is designed, and therefore you are not able to make a copy of it and then disseminate, which is an interesting word, of course, disseminate that that copy as a result. But the bigger picture here is she ran as one of the Democrats' top candidates, despite recently being a sex act performer on the internet. And she's trying to argue that it's unfair that this would come out. I mean, that seems to be fair. Look, if she were 20 or 18 and she was in college and she was like, working at Hooters or, like a boob bar or something like that, I'd be like, well, that was 20 years ago. People change. It probably still is a story, but it's a lot different than, hey, my husband and I did sex tapes for paying customers, and now it's unfair for that evidence to come out. Like, and for those of you out there like, this is a crazy story. This might decide who has control of the Virginia House. And there has been suggestions that if Glenn Youngkin and the Republicans take back control of Virginia House, he might decide to enter the presidential race. So this woman's sex tapes might in some way implicate who ends up running for president in the Republican primary.
It won't intimidate me and it won't silence me, she said in a statement. This is the woman who's running for the state house. My political opponents and their Republican allies have proven they're willing to commit a sex crime to attack me and my family because there's no line they won't cross to silence women when they speak up. Wow.
First of all, the audacity to make yourself the victim when you and your husband have been allegedly being paid to engage in sex acts on camera. By the way, they have 2 kids. I think the husband is a lawyer. The husband didn't say, hey, honey, I understand you've got this political itch, but, we did make a lot of sex tape videos.
Do you think they may, if they find out who found this video, do you think they may actually try to press charges? I mean, I didn't even know that this was a statute. I mean, I don't live in Virginia, but I think a lot of Virginians probably don't even know. It's a what do you call it? Like a revenge porn or what's that?
I think that's the term that a lot of people use, but that's
right.
different, Buck, because there's a
that's private conduct between 2 people that is recorded and then shared without consent to a third party. And there are a lot of states that have passed laws against that, and I think there are even criminal statutes now against that because of how common it is. But if you're engaged, this is the part of it. This is the key part of it legally, right, Lawyer Clay? If you're engaged in commercial online sexual activity, it's commerce now. I mean, this is now it's a business transaction. Is that also protected as though it's private consenting adults?
What we talked about off the air, and this is again so interesting. I mean, honestly, from a legal perspective, how this website is created, I'm not familiar with it. If this is the equivalent of like a private show, like people may have heard that such things could occur. There are like lap dances, and then there are private lap dances, or there are peep shows, and then there are private peep shows. In a digital context, is there a difference in terms of the way that those are constructed? I think legally that could be an interesting argument. But to your point, once you are engaged in the commercial selling of sex, right, which it seems quite clear that she was, people would pay for her and evidently she and her husband to engage in sex acts on camera. Once you're engaged in that, I can see a copyright claim where you can say, hey, you weren't allowed to make a copy of this and then distribute it to other people. And therefore, it's a copyright violation.
Yeah, but they're calling this a sex crime.
They're saying it's a sex crime.
Yeah, they're saying it's a sex crime and a criminal statute has been violated by the person who. I mean, I don't. And this is.
And also, Buck, I would just say, in the interest of elections, wouldn't you want to know if your congressperson or your House of Burgesses member or whatever it's called in Virginia, wouldn't you want to know if that was what they had done in their past? Like, I would want to know, oh, this person, they worked as a lawyer and they worked as a UPS delivery person, and like, oh, she was a sex worker. Well, okay. Recently? Like, that seems like something that would be hard. Got to be careful with all the word choices here. Hard to justify in many different aspects. And to make yourself the victim when you voluntarily engaged in public sex acts for money, I don't buy it.
Let me just put this out there. This is just my gut instinct on this, and maybe I'm completely way off. She may still win. Does that seem crazy to you?
So this is such a big topic of conversation. I think we're moving towards the era, and some of you are going to be like, my God, Clay, you're crazy. I think we're moving towards the era where naked photos, sex tapes, all of that stuff is so commonplace. If you are right now listening to us and you are 25 years old, I bet 60 or 70% of 25-year-olds today, at some point in time, there's a video or pictures or something that is of a scandalous nature because everybody's got phones in their hands. So I think the younger generation is desensitized in some way to this. I think that it's very generational. I think if you're listening to us right now and you're 60, I think you're like, my God, there's no way this woman can be a representative.
I was just thinking in terms of the narrative that she's a victim, and if under state law there is some interpretation of that a crime has been committed here, then she's a victim. And I'm just saying it doesn't seem to me like this is necessarily. I wouldn't bet money on this, but it doesn't seem to me like this is necessarily the end of this woman's aspirations to represent the state of Virginia.
Here's an easy answer, right?
So you think not crazy? You agree that's not crazy?
No, I don't know what the district looks like. I don't know what percentage it's Republican versus Democrat. Buck, they elected Fetterman. If I had to say, like, would you rather the guy who had a stroke?
Elected Fetterman. Well, you mean in general?
I just mean the district in general. Like, Democrats elected Fetterman. If you told me right now, hey, you have an option. It's a woman who did sex acts with her husband, but her brain works, and she can actually answer questions and represent the state of Pennsylvania, or John Fetterman, and I had to choose between the two, I would pick that woman. If Fetterman's not disqualifying, and heck, if Joe Biden's not disqualifying, if the woman believes the right things in terms of Democrat orthodoxy, I think a lot of people will show up and vote for her no matter what.